after I made that video, it kind of inspired me to think like, what would I do? I feel like shit has happened to my life, but it's happened so that I can learn things from it and maybe teach people things through it. So that's why I'm making these videos. That's why I like to talk about everything, about what I learned, because my memory's not very good, so I might not even remember. But I remember enough to know, like, if I was to run social services, what would I do differently? And I went to a boarding school between the age of 13 and 16 for 3 years. And because of that, I don't see boarding schools as a bad thing. I actually see it as quite a fun thing, a fun experience. And I think that's what I would do if I was running some sort of social services. The idea that you take parents, you take kids off parents and then give them into foster care when they're like, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then even 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I think it's incredibly costly because that parent has to be up all night. That parent has to, constantly be there. And if a child can't speak, how do you know that the child is not being abused? I believe that the child, in my sister's case, is very safe. But I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about the broader picture of things. How do you know that they're doing a good job? Maybe they're just doing a good job for social services, and the parent as well does not know. And therefore, especially when they're in such a young age, I think when they get to 5, 6, 7, they probably do need to go into foster care. Say if the parent, the single parent, and she gets into prison or something, or he, if they're older, then foster caring is necessary, because when you get to a certain age you do need to be out in the real world. But when you're 1, 2, 3, you spend most of the years in a cot and needing to watch baby videos, and the amount of effort that it takes one person to look after one baby, it is huge. And therefore it just seems silly if you've got thousands of babies under the age of 3 that are all being in foster care. I think it must be hugely expensive, huge, all the meetings and stuff like this. And I wouldn't do any of this. I think social services, when it comes to fostering under 3-year-olds or under 4-year-olds even, is just a huge money scam. And I would do it in a very different way. I would set up type of orphanages. I would set up orphanages in all the different areas where you have 60, 70 kids in each orphanage, and then you have like 10, I don't know, you probably need about 20 staff. But if they're alternating, or there needs to be 10, at least 10 people working all the way around to make sure that no kid is being abused, and that all the staff know each other and have a good relationship. But maybe even have more than 6. I suppose so. It depends on what the demand is, how many kids do need to be fostered. But when they're in the first few months, all they need is regular feeding. And after a few months, then they can start watching TV. So you can have like a room where you have like 6 of the sort of under 3 month stages, and then you can have another room. That's actually what I thought when I first told that Sophie's child was being taken away. I kind of just assumed that they were putting the child in some sort of nursery, like a boarding school type nursery, where there's loads of kids, and there's a few staff members that just alternate, make sure feeds and stuff, and then you can have different rooms. And I don't think something like that is bad, because I think if you put kids under the age of 3, like 1, 2, and 3, into foster care, if they get to live in a nice house, have sort of half brothers and sisters, they're going to start adapting to a certain type of lifestyle, that's probably not going an accurate reflection on the type of lifestyle that they're going to have when they go back to their original parents. This is that vision that I had. I had a vision where there was some sort of chavvy person who's living a kind of a horrible, shitty life, and I don't know, swearing at each other would be just part of the normal way of communicating. And she was looking at her child as if, you're a posh boy now. You ain't from my family. Like, okay, she was kind of a chavvy person, so that's why. But it was almost like a level of hatred towards the child because of this sort of amazing life that has been placed on it when she never got that. And I wonder how many parents go through this, where their child is forced into foster care, but that child lives a much better life, and then when they come out of it, they feel a certain hatred over you know, you got all things I never got. I only had one toy when I was a kid, and you know, what you've got like five, and lots of other things to play with, and you've gotten so much attention, and you know, I don't know. I think if when a child, if a child is being in foster care, you know, they should come out of the foster care and go back to their parents and be like, wow, I'm so happy to be here. You know, I'm thinking of Orphan Annie. You know, Orphan Annie, her orphanage was terrible, so I'm not expecting the orphanages to be as dirty as that, because that's pretty disgusting. But when the orphans came out of the orphanage, you know, they were so happy to go back home. Now, if you're fostering if you're fostering kids and giving them a much better life than the life that they would have if their parents were a bit competent, or if they didn't have a drug addiction or whatever, you know, if you're taking kids out of a impoverished family and then giving them a luxury lifestyle because their parents or aren't capable of looking after them or keeping them safe, but you know that the plan is to, you know, after they've fixed themselves, or after the kids are a bit older and able to talk or recognize things, you know, if you know that they're going to go back into living in a caravan or living in a sort of life of poverty, then I feel like by putting them in this sort of foster care thing, you're actually just setting them up for misery, because when they come out of the situation, they're not going to, you know. I was thinking about my sister's kids. You know, right now they've got a one bedroom flat, and they're all going to be sleeping in the same bed. So, but it's only going to be for 3 months or 2 months even. And when they get the second flat, they'll have a two bedroom, so they'll get to share a room, and the parents will have their own room. And my mum is going to be living in the one bedroom to help out and babysit, so that Marco can go back to work. You know, that's a really good plan and a good you know, system. And I think once they've got the bigger flat, it will be better. But yeah, there is going to be a shock system when the child comes out. I saw a picture of the house. Let's just say that my sister showed me a picture of where he was living, and it looked very nice. Now, so if you can afford that, but she would rather have flats so that she can rent. She would rather have lots of properties and rent some out and live in a tiny property. Why she would rather do that, I don't know. If it was me, I would sell all of them and just buy one big house and say this is my property, and have a much better lifestyle. You know, I'd definitely do that. But I don't know. It works the other way. But you know, this. I'm thinking about other kids. I'm not thinking about her. I'm thinking about the bigger picture. The number of, if you know, if all kids say that have come from impoverished families and who have family members that are like chavvy or a bit rude or perhaps a bit aggressive and a bit violent, or something, and they've had their children taken away because of violence, but you know that in a year's time when they're a bit older they're going to go back. You know, if you take them out of their original stuff and give them a home that's so much nicer, so much better, so much happier, then how is that child going to feel knowing that they have to go back into their real family? You know, they might start being snobbish and being like, oh, I didn't want to sit on that, and oh, that's dirty, you know. And the parents relationship starts to break between the child, you know, the jealousy, and you know, there's a lot of things that you have to think about, and I don't think social services thinks about these things. No, I don't. I mean, I can't say for certain because I don't know many different experiences, but I don't know. I would love to know that, but my solution would be, say, that if you're under four, there should be just a couple of orphanages all around the country where, you know, and I wouldn't do two a week. I think two a week is unnecessary, especially if the communication between parent and child is very, very bad. Then I wouldn't say two a week. I would just say once a week. Once a week they can come to the orphanage. There'd be a place, you know, like in a mental hospital, you have all the mental patients, and then there's a sort of room where you can meet with the mental patients and have a communication with them. So that's what I would do. Have some, you know, if you're brought up in an orphanage, it's actually quite good for you, because you're surrounded by kids who are similar to you and who are going through similar experiences. Has it stopped working again? Yeah, they're going through different experiences, and I think there'll be a sense of relief to get out of there. You know, if you're living with lots of different people, you'll probably make yourself less autistic. If some kids are autistic or expressing violence, then I guess they might have to have a separate room, so you can have different rooms, some that are smaller, with stuff that they can do in there. But I think I think it's a good thing to be brought up around lots of people until a certain age, and I think, and you can monitor them, make sure that they're safe, make sure that they're that no one's like that. So that's what I would do, and I wouldn't have meetings if you're having meetings 3 times a week, hourly meetings with people online, and if their response level of the mother or parent is just not there, then there's absolutely no point of having the meetings. If they don't like reading things or don't like forms, then there's no point of writing out thousands of forms, thousands of pages of forms to give them, because they're not going to be reading it. So I would assess. I would. There should be maybe just a weekly page on something, but I don't. Yeah, 1 page a week is all you need. You don't need constant monitoring and lots of, and you don't even need lawyers. You need some sort of lawyer at the beginning. You do a 1 week test, and you don't say anything. You don't help out with anything. You just say, okay, this, she did this wrong, she did this wrong, and then maybe keep the video footage. You might need some sort of video editor that takes all the footage that you have of this 1 week, and then you show how they fail. And after a year, you can go back and give them another 1 week test. But yeah, I think having hugely long tests is just a waste of time, and especially having tests when you're not even allowed to see the child. Yes, Sophie did that. Both Sophie and Marco had 6 weeks of tests where they were just asked lots and lots of questions, but the test did not involve seeing the child, communicating with the child, being with the child. The tests were even done before the child was even born, which is just ridiculous. To do a test on someone about whether or not they can look after a child and do it before they're born. Okay, you can monitor someone about what kind of life they live, can they look after themselves, so that you can do a test on whether they can look after themselves, yes, but this does not need to last 6 weeks. And if you're doing a 6 week test on whether someone can look after a child and you're doing it without the child, I just think that it's just a complete waste of time, because you're not going to get the answer. I didn't think Sophie couldn't look after children until I saw her with a child. It's only when I saw her with a child that I realised that there was a problem. But then, did she look after? I didn't know enough about the situation 3 years ago. I didn't know that if you can't look after yourself, that's a sign that you can't look after a child. It was only after I realised that she couldn't look after a child did I realise, can she look after herself? And then I was kind of like, no, I don't think she can in ways, because she's fancying Donnie, which wasn't a good option and stuff. But yeah, that's what I would do. I would set up orphanages and only do meetings if the parent is responsive to them. If the parent's not responsive, that video clip of Kanye West came into my head where he was talking to lawyers, and he just put some sort of mask over, he was being non-responsive and just put a mask over his face and playing on his phone. If that's what the meetings are like with social services, then there's absolutely no point of having them, because clearly they're of no benefit to anything.